Welcome back, everyone. We hope that you enjoyed that opportunity for some networking. We have another fantastic panel here. Our panelists will be speaking about how to best manage stress, always a pertinent issue. So already on the stage with us are Katia Bouazza, Head of Global Banking of Latin America at HSBC, Taisa Markus, Partner at White & Case, Michael Pergine, I know, we practiced it so many times. Policy and Government Lead for Human Health Commercial at Merck. And our moderator, who you've already met, my colleague, Cecilia Tornaghi, Director of Policy at ASUA and Managing Editor of America's Quarterly. Cecilia.
Thank you, Cara. And welcome back, everybody, with a little bit of fuel and caffeine. We're ready to go. As everybody was saying, they set the bar high for us, but we are gonna desert you as well. So anyway, I guess we're here with a topic that is, you would say that it's male and female, right? So managing stress, especially in we call it here, age of the hustle. We are always connected. This is 24/7 now for real. No one can. It's a hard choice to disconnect at this point in time. So it is something that affects both men and women. It's great to have a panel that we have the perspective also from a man to look at that, because it is both sides. But at the same time, research shows that you have it here in your program that women, that we are twice more likely to suffer from extreme stress and anxiety than men. And a lot of it, maybe the previous panel can give us a little bit of hints on why that is, right? The issue of confidence, the issue of feeling being pertaining to where you are. So all these things that came before the previous discussion do feed into the reality of managing stress and the difference there is for women to actually handle it. But at the end of the day, the tactics and how we get this done, I guess we can learn from each other and get support from each other. And I think there is also this, it's not a competition, right? It's something that we are creating a network of support is part, it's both male, female, all genders and ages. So I would like to get started here with the issue for you, the stress source or the sources, the main sources, and where do you see? And we did talk a little bit before. Katia, I want to start with you with the stress source. You talked a little bit about the issue of balance and planning and other things, but what do you see as the culprits of the major sources of stress that we can and should handle?
Okay, well, this is the best day because I am very stressed. I arrived from Mexico. I had a breakfast board meeting, and I'm catching a train to the IMF in DC, which I thought not a big deal. There are trains the whole time, but it looks like they're all sold out because of the rain. So if I don't make my train, it will be, a long time before I get there. But but thank you for having me here. I wouldn't miss it for the world. So the good news is that stress does not discriminate. Stress is the same for men and for women, and that's something that I can tell you. I mean, I work with a lot of men, a lot of senior people, men, mainly men, and it's really across the board. The one difference, and I think where your point comes through, is that what we do see is how different men deal with stress versus women. And that's really the management of stress is where our focus should be, especially when we are looking to advance in our career, or especially when we are already at the top of our careers. So you cannot expect high achievers or senior leaders in the industry to try to avoid stress. That's something that is stressful by itself. But what you could do is learn to manage stress in a better way. And yes, it is maybe I'm generalizing, but most men can deal and can manage stress better than most women. Now, of course, there's on both sides, I see very stressful guys that I tell them they need to go calm down, and I see very stressful, women, stressed out women. So again, it's about management of stress and what is causing the stress and how much of it can you deal with it and how much of it you can't, and you just have to go, with the flow. So I think that's really where the core is between, the comment you made between men and women.
Mike, do you agree with that? Is that different? And what are the main stressors for you?
You look like you're handling your stress pretty well, so better than most. I think when you think about stress, your point that you made is exactly right. You can't avoid it. It's there. More and more in the jobs that we have. For me, I'm responsible for all policy and government affairs and our integrated communications, patient engagement, and policy work outside the U.S. So the sun never sets for me. So that's a stressor. The pressure of delivering the numbers, of taking care of your team, of helping them develop, of being a husband, a father, a son, a brother, a friend, et cetera. You have all different kinds of pressure. I think if I would say there's a difference, I think sometimes find a difference in recognizing the good stress that helps you focus, that helps you prioritize, that helps you make trade-offs, that squeezes you a bit, and that crushing stress. And I think where I've seen people, men and women, really manage that well is harnessing that good stress to focus, to prioritize, to trade off, to learn how to do that, because those are great leadership skills. So that helps you actually advance in your career. These are skills you want to develop to be a leader. It's recognizing that crushing stress and being able to step away, to take a breather, to take a mental health day, to get away from that. So when you feel that pressure, just really building, recognize that's not the good stress. And the people that I think are most successful in managing that are the ones that can recognize that early and take whatever they need to do to manage that.
And Taisa, you mentioned that it's also that it's not of one kind, but that we have a specialty in getting an extra one.
Yeah, thanks. And Mike, I do agree with your point about good stress, and I thrive on that, but that is stress that's a challenge. I think it's very important to be thoughtful about stress. And there's sort of the stress that comes from externalities, client deadlines, work that's sort of difficult to get done, challenging issues that sometimes don't have solutions. I lead large teams in sort of large finance transactions in Latin America. People within the working group who have conflicting objectives. And then there's sort of the stress that you create yourself. And we specialize, women, we specialize in creating undue stress on ourselves. On any project, any transaction of any importance, a mistake will be made. And if someone tells you that that's not the case, they're lying. They're lying to themselves, they're lying to others. And women, and I definitely was guilty of this, we don't accept the small mistakes and we don't forgive ourselves for the small mistakes. And men are much better at seeing the bigger picture and not creating that kind of internal stress. And I know when I have people working for me on a team and the female associate delivers something that maybe has some tiny mistakes, the apologies come out, and I see the film sort of spooling in her head about how, I'm terrible, I'm no good, I could never do this, et cetera, et cetera. And the men are much more to them, it just comes much more easily to say, I'll fix it. What else should I fix? So I think being thoughtful about stress, having more confidence, and not creating these unreasonable expectations on yourself is really important in terms of managing stress. If you would forgive someone else for that mistake, why don't you forgive yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting how we go back to the unforgiveness and the massaging and exercising that muscle, right? Of also the self-confidence ties into forgiving yourself in the sense of not feeling, shouldn't be guilty in the first place. How do you see, let's put it here, then one major source then, which is making a mistake?
So I think that mistakes will be made. And and people should not stress about it other than two kinds of mistakes, which to me are always unforgivable. And one is because someone is simply lazy or sloppy. That's, in our professions, that's not okay. But really, that isn't the case. And the other mistake that often. The other mistake that really is unforgivable is the one that you find that you then don't bring to people's attention for it to be fixed. And you all should be working in situations where when that happens, the person you're reporting to will say, oh, that's unfortunate. What can we do to fix it? And everyone can rally around this, find the solution, and almost inevitably, it can be fixed, it can be righted, and it's better for it to be righted immediately with some short-term pain as opposed to letting something fester. So, in terms of the mistakes, just honestly, just expect them. And it doesn't, we're in the business of delivering perfect product, and the product is very, very good. But if someone tells you that they've done a deal or they've done a project where everything is perfect, that just doesn't happen. People are people. So I think just recognizing that and focusing on the task at hand, getting rid of that I need to be perfect noise, is a huge help towards reducing stress.
And Katia, you deal also with a huge, not only a large group, you have a lot of people under you, but also in a lot of places, across also multiple geographies and time zones, and then handling this issue of team and potential mistakes and things like that. How do you see that as impacting even the work of people? That are they afraid of working across the multiple geographies, and how does that stress, and how do you deal with that inside a team to kind of bring the boil down and get the work done?
Well, maybe sometimes I stress out my own teams, but that's another topic. I think the most important thing when you are dealing with large-scale projects with different teams, different time zones, different countries, different cultures, is to really improve communication. I think, having people you trust on the ground, because even though it's a phone call away, it is far. You need to have people that you trust, and that you trust that they will elevate things and they will come to you before the small mistake becomes a big mistake. And most of the large mistakes started small, where maybe someone could have dealt with it, and then it just kind of, it grew over time. So for me, the most important thing is communication. I think transparency, being able to trust one another, that, is rather than stressing and hiding, bringing it to the surface. Let's deal with it. Let's talk about it early on. I may still be upset, and they know that, but I'll be less upset than finding out, much later when then I can do something. We can collectively do something about it. So planning, communication, transparency really allows everyone to reduce the stress level, and it allows more of a group problem solving in a team spirit, rather than it's my mistake, it's my stress, and I'm just going to go somewhere and hide and hope it goes away, which it never does.
So speaking up, even if it's nerve-wracking, is a de-stressor as opposed to try to hide it. And Mike, you have the same thing. The sun never goes down with the team. So how do you foster this also with for young people coming in and being part of a team that is in that scenario of multiple areas and cultures? How are you able to actually foster that this ability to speak up and not stress?
Yeah, I think transparency, frequent communication is key. What the advice I would give you is be open and share what works for you. So, for example, I've got people that they perform much better when you have a routine contact. Every Monday we touch base, etc. That works for them. I have other people that it's more ad hoc. And if I try and impose a system where it's routinized on someone who's more ad hoc, it's not going to work for them or for me or for the company or for the patients we serve. So I think what I would say is speak up on what works for you. You're going to find that common ground. And I think we have, to some of the comments earlier, everyone's going to make mistakes. If anyone tries to tell you they've never made a mistake coming up, they're also lying to you. So you've got more in common than you think, more in common than there are differences. And I think if you're open around challenges you're facing, even in the communication style, you're gonna get to a good point. It's incumbent upon the leader, the manager, whoever it is that you're working with or working for, to support you, to lift you up. So I think you'll find that they'll be more accommodating to you if they know they're getting the best performance out of you.
And Katia, with this, between Mexico and the IMF, a little bit of a panel on stress to distress. I mean, that, you mentioned planning as a major issue. How do you see, and how can that be fostered, that people can be able to have and aspire to a career where you would have all those multiple requests on you, and at the same time keep your cool?
Well, I think, look, I don't want to sound like the feminine excuse, oh, I don't do it on my own. But in this case, I don't do it on my own. It's about building a support network around you. It's about finding what works for you and what works for the people around you. And like you said, some people have different preference in communication. It's also good not to impose your preference all the time. So it starts at home, with the support I get from my spouse, my kids understanding the demands on my time, and the support I have in the office. Sometimes I say my assistant stresses for me, so I don't have to stress. So it's true. It's about building the network and making sure that, when you have to be somewhere, you can be. Because by the time it's too late to plan once it's on the 11th, 12th hour. Now there are last minute changes all the time, but at least you've planned for a base case scenario and then you adjust. And this is very important for women coming up early on in their careers. It's very important to know that you have the support and you play it in your head. If I have to be on a plane tomorrow morning, how would I do it? And do it, play it in your head before you have to do it. Because most of your male counterpart will be on that plane and will go see that client and will beat you to the punch if you're not prepared. So that was something that early on was one of my challenges. And setting my home life, setting my office life around being able to do, for the most part, these things is critical. And it's very critical for young women to think about it and to think about, the path to success is an equal one in a way. It does not discriminate. It's whoever gets there first, right, in a way. So plan accordingly. You don't go jogging with bad shoes, right? You buy good shoes if you're going to run a marathon, for example. Actually, I never ran a marathon, so. But I always have good shoes because you never know when you're going to run. So it's about planning accordingly, and it's about giving the people, the communication and having trust in them as well, to where you trust that they're going to support you.
And then there's always this idea that the women have to be home, have to be helped with the kids, and will have to take the time or will lower their profile because they're pregnant or whatever it might be. Whereas, a man, nobody thinks that, oh my God, he may have to go to his kids' game, or, oh, his wife is pregnant, he's not going to come to work. So that, I don't think that crosses anybody's mind, but you have families too. You have kids too. You have ideas too. So how do you see that and balance having those family requests on you?
I think an important word to say is mix, as opposed to balance. I think it's impossible to find balance. It's mix. It evolves over time. You have to adapt. You have to adjust. You have to have the support system around you. For me, I'm fortunate. My wife, my kids, they're amazing in supporting what I do, and I'm supporting what they do. Which you have to find that. You have to be very clear and open around what you're looking for, what's important to you, what your priorities are. And I think from my perspective, what's important to me is family. So I've coached football and basketball and baseball, kind of coming up, and I've had to make trade-offs, but those trade-offs are important to me. So I think we all face that, and I think you have to be clear with what's important to you around doing that. So I haven't been able to take certain roles or participate in certain things, but I don't look at it as I couldn't. I look at it as I chose something else. And I think that's something, when you look at it that way, you're taking back your control of your career, of your choices. It's not, I was forced to do it, I chose to do it. And if you understand what's important to you, where you want to put your presence, then it's not as stressful. Still stressful, but not as stressful as if it's someone doing something to you.
And Taisa, you mentioned that, right? And actually being open in the workspace about your choice.
No, absolutely. And to echo Mike's emphasis on home, I think one of the most important career choices you can make is your choice of home life and partner. So my husband is 100% behind me, my biggest cheerleader, and he gets me in a way that I don't even get myself. And he has a big job, and I'm 100% behind him, and that removes so much stress from my life. But I think it's really, he gets me. When I had my first child, I suddenly became Earth Mother. This is the first time anyone has given birth. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to stay home because this is a miracle, and I'm the only person who's ever done this in the history of the world. And I ended up talking about the big ask. I ended up talking to my law firm, and this is, dinosaurs roamed the earth. This was in 1996. And I talked to my law firm about, I said, I'm not going to be working anymore because I've had a baby, and this is a miracle. And they came back and said, no, maybe we can make arrangements. You can be, I was up for partner at that particular time. And they said, well, at the time, part-time partners, we're not quite ready for that, but you can come back as a part-time counsel, 3 or 4 days a week. And I talked to my husband, and he said, you're going to go crazy sitting at home. And even if financially it doesn't matter because we need lots of childcare, et cetera, you go and do this. And he got me at a time, he understood me at a time that I didn't even understand myself, and it was a fantastic decision. And I worked part-time for 9 years, and I became partner at a major firm at the age of 45, 5th grade class mom. I had a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. So the ask is really important. And that ask came out in kind of an odd way because, it was sort of me basically having a panic or just like losing it. And then a good thing came out of it. But among the most important career choices are the personal choices that you make. Because if I had to be doing what I do, flying to client meetings, dealing with, emergencies at midnight or 2 a.m. with someone who didn't understand that, it would never work.
But then there is for young professionals, so you've all accomplished and learned and found your ways, but for young professionals that are dealing with families, how do you foster a possibility or suggest this opening to actually share what is actually personal, not work related when the time comes, when you said you're quitting, and then obviously your team loved you so much and said no you're not quitting, but when no one goes in thinking they're gonna drag me to stay. So how do you handle a team that in that sense to open up that space for people to be able to say what it is?
So I know at major law firms there are sort of 3 issues around gender, and one is recruiting. And the major law firms are great at recruiting classes that are actually majority women. And I'm going to misquote some of these statistics, but I did see a statistic at one point in the past where in the top, let's say, 15 or 20 law schools, if you look at the students in the top third of the class, something like 70 to 80% are women. So it's not just that the law schools are graduating women 50-50, but when you're in school and you're writing the tests and you're raising your hand and pleasing the professor, women excel. So we have no problem recruiting diverse classes in terms of gender. And then there's the retention issue. And major organizations have all sorts of policies in place, and I know Katia and Mike can comment as well. And I would encourage everyone to take full advantage of all of that. And I encourage the men to take advantage of the family work-life balance policies as well. And then there are sort of the glass ceiling issues, which are very complicated, and they play into career paths for younger women, in that, you know, it's much easier to deal with the day-to-day and to deal with the day-to-day stress when you see the older woman who has succeeded and it doesn't seem crazy. So,
Are you calling us older?
both of us. Not Mike.
Katia, how do you see that? I mean, actually fostering that space, or how should, you know, young professionals actually feel the freedom to bring the home to work, so to speak, whenever the pressure arises?
This is a very important topic because we've spent, banking similar to the law profession, we've spent now a decade to perfect recruiting, you know, 50-50 class or recruiting women at the entry level. And we have. But now we're on to the second stage because we've been recruiting them, then they do great, and then we lose them. So the retention is very difficult, and it happens right at the stage where a woman is deciding whether to stay on or to have a family. And now the move has shifted to what else can we do to support and maintain some of the talent that is thinking, should I stay or should I go? What we found is, in part, was a discouragement because they don't see the future. They don't see women in senior roles, so they don't think they can get there. Also, they may not be advancing as fast as they want to say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice not being home to be here. Versus also just pure logistics. They just, you know, it's a time that is overwhelming, and they'd rather just take the easier choice. It's not easier, I should say, because I wouldn't last at home more than 3 months after maternity. I was in a suit ready to go to work. But sometimes it is easier to say, I can't deal with this right now, I'll just focus on being home. And if that's a woman's choice, it's great. But it does become harder to re-enter the workforce. As to, you know, as opposed to working out some kind of arrangement. In some companies, it's acceptable. And what we are also working on, so in addition, I mean, parenthood has become a significant topic within the work-life balance. And parenthood, including maternity leave, but post-maternity leave with support, and also bringing the paternity leave into the picture, because, you know, I'm a big believer that if one half of the workforce leaves and the other half stays, the other half is going to just advance. So, you know, removing the taboos around men taking time out, you know, to do the things like medical visits for their kids or things around the school, or forcing companies to give longer parental leaves, which we are working to try to implement that, which is by law doesn't exist in the US. It's very limited here, and other countries do it, but some companies are starting to do it here. So I think that's important, and having flexibility. I think that's probably for me the most important part of my job, is being able to say, well, this morning I'm working from home. I have a lot of 6, 7 a.m. calls with London, that if I'm in town the 3 days or so a month I'm in town, I want to take my kid to school. I would say take her to work too, but I want to take her to school. So it's about taking the call, being able to say to the global head, I'm not going to do VC from work at 6:30 a.m. I'm going to take it from home, because then I can hang up and I can actually do another call, and then, you know, possibly, drop off that day, or sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But it's important to me. So if there are certain things that are important to you, you need to bring them, you know, to the picture, and you need to do it in a way that's non-threatening. You're still doing your job. It's not an ask. It's just basically stating a fact.
Yeah, if I could comment, what I would say to you, the advice I would give you is, from a company perspective, it's better for me to work with you and get as much of you as I can than to go out and acquire someone new to come in. So what was just said here is really important. You've got more in common than you think with the people that you want to talk to. So there's a difference between sharing and complaining, and I think what you're looking to find is the place where you can find a solution. So if you need to adjust hours, if you need to work from home, if you need more flexibility, bring that forward, because I think the audience that you're talking to will have faced those same challenges. And again, the fact that you're here already tells me that you're high achievers, high performers, looking to advance your careers. You're probably the kind of person who's delivering for your organization. And again, I would rather work with you to keep you with our organization, to keep you motivated, to keep you happy. And if that means finding adjustments that work for you, I'm going to do that. And I think most places would do that as well.
Do you say that there is there a cultural element? Was that, I mean, you that